Did you know that in some Muslim countries, women can be stoned to death as a punishment for being raped? In the 21st century, the world continues to witness brutal and archaic forms of punishment. Among them is stoning to death, a cruel and inhumane practice that persists in some Islamic countries despite international condemnation. Stoning, or rajm in Arabic, is a form of capital punishment rooted in certain interpretations of Islamic law, or Sharia. It is primarily imposed for offenses such as adultery and apostasy. While many Muslim-majority nations have abolished this practice, some Islamic countries still justify and enforce it, citing hadiths, traditional sayings attributed to the Prophet Muhammad. The process begins with an accusation, often requiring confessions or testimonies from multiple witnesses. Women are disproportionately affected, frequently convicted under dubious circumstances, such as falsely accused of adultery or being forcibly gang raped. If found guilty, the condemned is buried up to their chest, for women, or waist, for men, ensuring that they cannot escape. A crowd, comprising religious authorities and sometimes even civilians, is then gathered to carry out the execution by hurling stones. These stones are chosen to be large enough to inflict serious pain, but not so large that they cause immediate death. The suffering is meant to be prolonged. Some Islamic countries continue to implement or allow this brutal method of punishment, often targeting women accused of adultery or moral transgressions. Iran. In 1986, Soraya Manuchehri was stoned to death after being falsely accused of adultery. Her tragic case was later depicted in the film The Stoning of Soraya M. Somalia. In 2008, a 13-year-old girl, Aisha Ibrahim Duhulo, was stoned to death after reporting that she had been gang raped. Afghanistan. In 2015, Rokhshana, a young woman, was stoned to death by Taliban militants for attempting to elope. In 2013, in Pakistan's Kuram tribal district, a Pakistani soldier who tried to elope with a woman was stoned to death by a mob. Nigeria. Amina Lawal was sentenced to stoning for adultery in 2002, though she was later acquitted after international pressure. Sudan. In 2012, Intisar Sharif Abdallah was sentenced to death by stoning for adultery, but was later released after global outcry. Brunei. In 2019, Brunei implemented a new Sharia penal code that includes stoning for adultery and homosexual acts, though enforcement remains unclear. Despite growing international outrage, some Islamic countries continue to uphold stoning as a legal form of punishment. Human rights organizations such as Amnesty International and the United Nations have repeatedly called for an end to this cruel practice. The voices of the victims must not be forgotten. As the world advances in human rights, the question remains, how long will such medieval punishments be allowed to persist? The international community must stand together against these atrocities, ensuring that justice does not come at the cost of cruelty and suffering. Change begins with awareness. Share this message. Demand justice.